From the Pink Seats podcast of the State of Louisville Podcast Network, we are back. Is there anything going on? I haven't heard of anything. I guess tonight's show is all about Mount Rushmores. No, we'll find out where Matt is. Where the hell is Matt? We got a game to play this weekend. Matt's not here. Guess what's back? Amari Huggins, Bruce, and football. The Cards get ready for action. The first game of the season. This Saturday, we're going to talk about an actual game. We're going to get into a lot of things on the show as well, from an announcement. We're going to get into some news about the show. We're going to talk a little bit about some things going on around the ACC and some new segments. And then we've got punishments. We'll get into some predictions as well as game previews and all the things that you can expect this season. Let's get into it. All this and more right now from the Pink Seats podcast. Let's go.
Let's say the worst happens. Shuck has an injury week 1. We have to trot Pierce out, and he looks like a kid who's in his first year as a starting quarterback. This defense, I'm 100% confident in saying Louisville still could win 8 games just being swaggy Iowa.
From the Pink Seats podcast, presented by Frankfort Avenue Liquors and Wine, 2115 Frankfort Avenue. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. YouTube at the State of Lou. I say YouTube. It's youtube.com, HTTPS. Like I'm a freaking boomer out here. Sorry. But at the State of Lou on YouTube. And then, of course, follow along with the show on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at Pink Seats Pod, at the State of Lou. And follow the boys here at Jacob Lane 08, at Vincent Lococo, at producer_Keith. Game week. Like, let's fucking go. It's time to play football. I'm so stoked. We made it, man. Finally. That's right.
I mean, yeah, you all can finally put the rest, all the Delta Dawn TikToks I've sent you all throughout the summer, because we're finally here and it'll be more football, or card tape as they like to call it.
Sure, but I could argue there's no greater time than now to get Delta Dawn TikToks from you, my brother. That's what I wake up and think about all day, is when is Vince going to hit my inbox with the Delta Dawn hype video? I need it like I need
one
air,
daily,
to be quite honest.
One daily, I can do
one daily. I'll take 2 daily at this point. One for lunch and one for dinner, man. That'll get me through a 24-hour period. But hey, we've only got a couple more sleeps to go before Louisville football takes the field in their first game of the 2024 season against Austin Peay. And there is a lot on the line for the Louisville football program this season. Can they prove that last year was not a fluke? Can they prove that the Louisville football program is here to stay, that they are now an established name brand back on the scene in the ACC, and with an expanded college football playoff to 12 teams, that they are a legitimate contender to make the football playoffs? And at that point, who knows what will happen? A lot on the line for Jeff Brom going into year 2. They've got continuity unlike anything matched across the entire college football landscape. You do not see staff stay together like this, even a lot of times with second-year coaches. So that continuity is going to feed into hopefully player development, as well as some of the new faces being able to assimilate into the team. And we're going to get into all of that tonight. Keith is an expert on Austin Peay. We're going to start calling you Professor Keith at this point, the way you're going to school us on Austin Peay and all the things that we need to watch for. And as I mentioned, we're going to get into a little bit of what's happening around the ACC. We'll do some predictions. A lot is happening on From the Pink Seats podcast. But first, let me just kind of set the scene as to what this year is going to look like. You might have noticed over the last 4 months, that the team has expanded here. More faces have entered the show more frequently. As the content grows and as the audience grows, there's more need for content. There's more need for help. And so we are at the point finally where we can deliver the extra content that many have asked for and have tried to give us suggestions on how we can grow with for the last couple of years. And so we're excited that starting this year, we will move to a 2-show-a-week format. This is a long time coming. We've been doing recaps, what feels like late. We sometimes do game previews, what feels like early. It's been hard to kind of find the secret sauce between our busy lives, the game happening, and us as adults now needing a full 24 hours to recover as if we played in said game. Matt's schedule, as you can see, Matt's not here. As you're listening, Matt is not here tonight, just Vince and producer Keith, myself. So we obviously have the need for it. We have the bodies for it now. And so what you'll see is a recap episode 1 or 2 days after the game, and then a preview episode much further into the week once we hear from coaches and have a really good understanding of kind of what's on the line. And that allows us to dig into the nerdiness, the scheme, some of the things that we just quite frankly did not have a 2.5-hour show every week. Haven't been able to really do the last year. A couple of years.
It's gonna be nice not feeling rushed to squeeze everything in, on a Tuesday or Wednesday night like we have been the past couple of years. So I'm definitely excited for the 2 shows.
Yeah, it's exciting times, and things are subject to change in terms of what this rotation looks like. But the recap shows will consist of myself, Vincent Lococo, as well as producer Keith, with our preview shows being a very similar group, but you just sub out myself for Matt, rolling alongside of Keith and Vince. So very confident that between the 4 of us, we'll be able to, continue to churn out great content.
I think this means Keith and I are the face of state from the Pink Seats now.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's what that means.
One could make the argument that Keith deserves his mug up on the cover now. He's officially official. So we'll need to earmark a little bit of budget.
I draw those by hand. Keith.
That's right. That's right.
Make sure to get the curls in the mullet.
So it took me about 3 weeks to get Jacob to fix my hairline last time, so we'll work on the mullet for you.
Yeah, and Matt looking like a Viking, which I've always thought is hysterical, just a Nordic Viking. But no, we're extremely excited and hope that you all will continue to tune along. Some will be live, some will be our usual YouTube and audio mix, but make sure that you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, that you're following all the social media channels, as I mentioned before, as well as on anywhere you get your podcasts, whether it be Apple, Spotify, Heart, et cetera, et cetera. So, all right, that's out the way. We got the announcements and boring stuff out, and now let's talk football because Austin Peay is Saturday. We still haven't put official predictions pen to paper yet. That's an important part of a podcast. And I went back last year, and I'm actually quite impressed, fellas. Like, especially you, Vince. There were a lot of things I'm listening. I took some notes, actually, of some things that you said and some things that we kind of went into earlier in the year, with predictions. But, one of the things that we talked about in the season early in the year that we're going to get into again tonight, I think, and it might be a recurring theme, are those trap games. Last year we talked about, I talked about Pittsburgh. I actually predicted Louisville to lose to Pittsburgh last year in our season opener, but we talked about those games. We talked about some of the statistical leaders and all those things that we essentially predicted to be correct because kind of had an idea of what the team was going to look like. So tonight we'll get into some of those. We'll predict what the record will be for Louisville. We'll talk a little Sack King, give you a little preview. We probably got a unanimous winner there. And then we'll talk about, of course, Austin Peay and predict that game much later on. And that's where the punishments come into play. We'll see about some punishments and some rewards. You can't have good without bad. So we got to make sure we're weighing that equally. But, fellas, let's jump into the predictions here and start on the offensive side of the ball. We could do like an overall team MVP, and there's a number of different ways that we could go at this, but I thought we'd break it up into, one high level award for each side of the ball. So I went with offensive MVP, defensive MVP. So, I think we're going to have similar answers, and that's okay because, obviously there's only so many guys that can play a big enough factor and a big enough role on an offense and defense to win MVP. Unless you're like in Alabama, where I guess your ninth guy is a 5-star.
Yeah, right.
And,
you sub in 5-star quarterback Tua Tagovailoa in the national championship game to win.
Yeah, right, exactly. So we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna have some probably some overlap here, and that's okay. But I'll go ahead and I'll kick this one off with what I suspect will, and maybe not, be one of your all's answers as well. But it's kind of obvious. I'm going to go with Tyler Shuck. As much as I think the running game is going to be a big part of this team again this year, I really do think, and we've talked a lot about this offline and of course on the show, is the dynamics that he brings in terms of an accurate passer who can really spread the ball around, throw it just about anywhere, but really can hit that deep ball, that home run ball. And, Keith, last week, I think rattled off 3 examples of balls that Plummer just dropped short of a receiver and, cost them a touchdown or could have cost them. Yeah, probably. Exactly right. So, there's a lot of things that have to go right for him. I won't, we don't need to recap the injury history because that's not his doing, but he's going to, need the offensive line to take a step. there's obviously a conversation to be had about the strength of the receivers, and what they will provide with Colin Lacey out for an extended period and counting on some new faces. But I think Tyler Shuck's got everything that they're looking for from a leadership perspective. I find it just so interesting hearing Jeff Brom talk about him, especially with his concept of the offense, his concept of being able to read a defense to make, he didn't necessarily say this, but reading between the lines, to be able to make some adjustments, to have some saying kind of what happens.
He's only taken, I think in that interview he did, I saw he's only taken like the minimum amount of classes that's required of him to be eligible right now, which is the smartest thing ever out of a 7th year, senior quarterback who's not really looking to get another degree or 2nd degree or 3rd degree, 4th degree, however long you've been in college at this point, Tyler, will be in football. And these are the checks and maneuvers, and especially with the new helmet deal going in, it's going to be interesting to see how smart Tyler's really going to be on the football field.
He's almost like a GA or a QC that plays. You know what I mean? Like
Joe Burrow, whenever he was on the field, he took that entire senior year as essentially his rookie year in the NFL to study film and to get better in that aspect of the game.
I think the margin for error with Tyler Shuck is going to be a little bit slimmer this year than what I think Jack Plummer had last year, which is saying something because there's not as much, in my opinion, there's not as much dynamic talent around him. They're going to really lean on him to win games, in my opinion, where last year you could say, hey, Jawar, hey, Isaac, go win us the game. And maybe Donald Chaney and Mo Turner and some others could form that. But right now, I think he's going to have to make a lot. And there's going to be games where you're like, okay, we won that game because Tyler Shuck made that incredible back shoulder throw on 3rd down at the goal line that won them the game, where last year you walking out of there probably with an L. So I'm going to go Tyler Shuck.
Really stepping out on that ledge there. Oh,
right. I know. Last week with our,
well, I'm right there on that ledge with you. So they make the joke in Tommy Boy. A lot of people go to college for 7 years. They're called doctors. Well, Dr. Shuck in the backfield with his PhD in football, slinging the pill all over the yard. He's going to be the offensive MVP. He's going to be the engine that makes the team go. Just to piggyback onto what Jacob said, we don't have, at least in my opinion, we don't have the O-line and we don't have the running backs to run the ball like we did last year. We had, that's not to say that we have worse O-line or worse running backs, but they're just built different. The talent that Braun brought in from the portal to start for us was brought in because of their pass blocking acumen. So we're really going to be counting on Tyler Shuck a lot to throw the ball around the yard. I would assume the expectation is to see him throwing the ball 35 to 45 times a game. Whereas if that were to happen last year, we see a quarterback throwing the ball more than 35 times in a game. We're like, what the hell went wrong?
I'd be drinking 30 to 40 beers a game to try and forget that.
So, yeah, I mean, offensive MVP, especially with a roster that's as precariously set up as ours is, Tyler Shuck's the guy. Like, start and finish, QB1.
So the guy I think who's going to be the offensive MVP would have added a lot of assets to the team last year, and that's a tight end, and that's Jamari Johnson. I think he will actually be the MVP just based off adding that other aspect of passing in the pass game, and, it'll be interesting to see how he kind of develops in the run game. I mean, obviously Tyler's the number one answer. The team's going to run through the quarterback, but I think the quarterback's also going to need a Robin to his Batman, and that could be Jamari Johnson in a lot of ways. Not necessarily saying he's going to lead us in receiving yards, could lead us in touchdowns. Marshawn Ford did it before. No reason somebody like Jamari Johnson or Mark Redmond could do that. So we'll have to see.
Yeah. No, I mean, there would have to be obviously a massive leap in improvement with a guy like that who's got all the intangibles. He just needs an opportunity in the offense.
Well, you heard
to find his
Brian.
role.
You heard Brian highlight how much better he's doing in understanding the playbook. And a lot of times whenever quarterbacks and stuff, I mean, he's already used to reading a defense out of the quarterback position in high school. So that's something that's going to just come natural to him whenever he's running routes and stuff like that out of the tight end position. I mean, it could even help him more pre-snap too at the same time, just being able to find something and him and Tyler kind of be on the same page. That's where the repetition in the offseason comes into play. So That's what I'm going to go with out of not being normal.
Yeah, well, look, man, I'm here for it. I think it certainly would indicate, that Louisville's offense has kind of rebuilt, or not rebuilt, but kind of shifted back to some of what we saw with Jeff Brom under Purdue, with the heavy use of a tight end and really utilizing that to stabilize an offense and be able to, sling the ball inside, outside, use that tight end to really kind of set up what they want to do in those different areas of the field.
Especially with Lacey being out. I mean, having somebody like him that could potentially slide into that slot position for you. I mean, you're not going to be covering a slot Jamari Johnson with the same guy you'd be covering a slot Colin Lacey with. So that could just provide for a whole different type of matchup for Jeff Brom in the offense.
Oh, I mean, you saw the Georgia Tech linebacking core. You get one of those guys outside of the box and actually having to try and cover someone. That could be a matchup nightmare.
Yeah, there's no shot that dude with the cowboy collar can cover water if he fell out of a boat.
Dude, he's running over most corners. I mean, most corners are, 6'1" out of 6'2" max. Most of them are, 175, 180 pounds, whatever. He's running over them. And then safeties, I mean, even the same thing. I mean, you got some bigger safeties out there, and there's a lot of good secondaries in the ACC. But a guy like Jamari Johnson, I mean, that is just a freak of nature that has.
DBs are taught to not give ground against tight ends. Like, that's what we always taught at Louisville whenever I was working under Brian Brown, is like he would be on a corner's ass if he was backpedaling on a tight end. So why are you backpedaling on a tight end? So you're slower than the tight end. That's what you're telling me. That's what you need to backpedal for, essentially. So, I mean, those types of matchups where a big body guy like Jamari can move a guy just straight off a spot and then they're playing catch up could be huge.
Yeah. All right, let's transition to the other side of the ball. This one, there's a lot of options here. I don't think there's as many options on offense. I don't know if that's necessarily a hot take, but a lot more options defensively. So, Keith, we'll kick it off with here with you, man. What do you think? Who you got?
So this was one where you sort of jump back and forth. I feel like there's two primary choices that initially come to your mind, and then you have to dig a little bit deeper and maybe you can come up with something. I'm not going to be the one doing the digging. Quincy Riley. I think that a lot of what we're going to be doing on the defensive side of the ball this year is going to depend on relying on the secondary to cause coverage sacks and to stall for time, or trust them in one-on-one matchups so that we can stack the box if need be and rush 6, 7, hell, even 8 guys, depending on the situation, and trust that coverage isn't going to get the lid blown off of it. And that starts with a guy who can shut down a half of the field in Quincy Riley. We're going to match up against the teams with a lot of wide receiver talent. If we want to go man-to-man on them, we have arguably the best cornerback in college football, and we can go toe-to-toe with whoever you trot out there with them. So for me, Q is that guy for us, and I feel like that's going to be who we lean on the most.
Now, to piggyback off what Keith said, I'm going to stick in the secondary, and I'm going to go with MJ Griffin. I think he will end up being the captain of the secondary, captain of the defense in a lot of ways. He's going to be one of the ones getting us in play, the DBs in check, and what they should be doing pre and post snap. He's a guy who we've all agreed would not be at Louisville if he would had the opportunity to play last year. I think people are sleeping on him a little bit just based off this ACL injury, which, I mean, why wouldn't you? It's an injury. How is a guy ever going to rehab and return? Is he going to be the same player, X, Y, and Z? I'm more than confident that MJ will, based off of him not wearing any kind of, compression sleeve, knee sleeve, any brace, any stuff like that. He's moving well. I mean, I am really excited to see MJ Griffin this year, outside of the guy Jacob's probably going to mention.
Yeah. It's interesting. I thought a long time about this with MJ Griffin being the guy that I really was thinking about the most. And I was almost close to calling it a done deal. Even listening to our preview episode last year, you made a comment about 2022. The defense shifted, and it was very obvious that the big play was no longer something they gave up, and that was because of MJ Griffin. And I think that same thing is going to exist here. And for the sake of not repeating, I actually have a different answer that I just locked in about 5 seconds ago. But I'm going to go with the Sack King himself. And I'm going to give you a good reason why. Okay. No, I'm not being paid to say that with the shirt. It looks like it certainly right now. I'm not, but I'm just celebrating our glorious Sack King, man. That's what we do around here. And I think there's a big reason why this season, I think that he's going to be worthy of that. When you talk about most valuable, it means, that you can't stand to play without them. They are that important to your team and to what you're doing. And there's going to be so many times this season where he gets what, guys playing with Yaya and Yasir were always beneficiaries of. And those are those sacks where Ashton's getting double teamed and Ashton's getting chipped, and there's freeing up so much opportunity to blitz an additional defensive back or a linebacker, like we talked about last week, the option to play him in so many different places. We're going to see improvements not only from the guys around him, but then you talk about the incomers with Jernigan and with Logan and all of the other pieces, not even mentioning Adonijah Green. He is going to bring their level of play up, which is one big reason, but he's also going to dominate this season. I mean, I don't necessarily think he's going to be a first round pick. I think it looks more like he's going to be second, third, right type of guy. But I think that he is going to put up the production that resembles an all ACC player, potentially an all American nationally. And you're talking about a guy who's going to push through double teams to do that. That to me is worthy of the MVP. So that's why I feel good sharpieing that here and giving this opposite answer, which is always a nice benefit as well.
So one of the things I also love about Ashton is the versatility that he brings to the defensive line play. A lot of guys, they're either lock him in as either an interior D tackle, if they're a big boy, lock him in at a nose, or if they're a little bit more of a slender frame, put him outside on the edge spot. Ashton can do all of that because he's been lifting and doing CrossFit and stuff since he was like 7 years old or something. So he's strong as a truck. Kid's strong as a friggin' ox, has the moves to come off the edge, has good bend getting around the edge as well. I love the versatility that he brings. And I thought that was going to be a lot more popular of a pick. And that's why I decided to give the secondary a little bit of love. But no, I think there's hardly a tandem in the country that sort of synchronizes better than Quincy being able to provide extra coverage to help the secondary and Ashton cutting that time short so the secondary gets bailed out and not having to cover as long on plays. Like, those two are going to be quite the tandem this year.
And, dude, you're not even mentioning Nicholson and Thornton and Williams and Neal and all and so on. Like,
well, I'm getting ready to mention one of them.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Newcomer of the year, Aaron Williams. Mean, for me, that's got to be a lock just based off of how I have a feeling that he might not be the other starting corner. They'll put him in a lot more in a dime nickel package type deal stuff. But, I mean, I would have no issue with him being that other starting corner. And the kid's tough as fucking nails. Played his entire – I don't know if it was the entirety or majority of it with a torn ACL. I mean, that dude's a dog. Like, that's a guy I will go to war with in my foxhole any day of the week.
Yeah, that's the type of guy you want to have as a teammate. Aaron Williams.
Oh, 100%.
Dog.
Yeah, and I love, and I think I've said this a lot here recently, but it's something I'm going to watch for this weekend. It's something I'm going to watch for next weekend. It's something I'm going to watch for in the middle point of the year, the end of the year. What is happening with the 2023 guys? How much are they getting on the field? What impact are they having? I want to continue to see these guys become the stars that we, kind of awarded them to be based off of their high school accolades and all that. That's great. But now it's time to step into the roles and be big boys on the football field and make this team, that kind of team. You know what I mean?
I'm really excited about that as well. And I think depending on how many are able to mature and make that step this year, that could shape a lot of recruiting ideology, especially now with this proposed legislation cutting things back to a single transfer window, which I don't know how that's going to work without anything being collectively bargained or without antitrust exemption. That's a different episode for another off season. But this 23
that's a Keith exclusive episode.
But this 2023 class has, especially at the top, has stayed together for the most part and has stuck with this program.
That's so rare in this day and age, Keith. I mean, that's dope to see. And I was just thinking that in my head as well, that, I mean, seeing kids stick together like this, and it's just rare, man. I mean, in today's day and age, you don't see kids sitting at a school for a while.
Yeah. So, and we're talking about a few guys that are probably going to see the field this year. Well, I mean, we saw guys last year like Stanquan Clark, This year, Aaron Williams is probably going to get some play. Pierce Clarkson going to get some play. Maybe Jaleel McClain, maybe a couple of other guys in that
Jamari
class.
Johnson. I mean,
Jamari Johnson, yeah.
Potential MVP of the offense. I mean, hell, if that's the case, we're talking about that class being set up to like be ready to go like for this schedule that they have in front of them if the SEC teams stay. We'll see if they do. But you're talking about a season a couple of years from now, you might be playing, one of the most difficult schedules in the country. So I love that. I'm here for it. It's an underlying theme of the year that I'm going to measure each week. I don't know if it's segment worthy yet. I don't think we're at a 2023 update quite yet, but we're getting close. I don't know.
I think the first 2 weeks are definitely good 2023 update range games because those are games, quite frankly, like myself as a walk-on, like if I was redshirt at any point that I was healthy to play, those are 2 games where I'd be licking my chops like I'm getting in this one.
Right. This is it.
Yeah. And if you're a 2023 guy, you should be looking forward to these 2 games.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm going to stick with the theme of corners here for newcomer of the year. And I envision this being, you fall under this exemption of guys that were on the team last year because Aaron didn't play, but I was thinking of this being somebody who's on the team that's for the first time this year. So really opening it up to the transfers. But Aaron qualifies, though, because he didn't play last year a single snap.
Loophole.
So he's still a newcomer. We're going to see him for the first time. But like
he's
a TJ
like Ben
Capers,
Simmons
for example,
getting Rookie of the Year.
That's exactly right.
Joel Embiid.
Yeah. But this might be a cop out, but I'm going to have a co-newcomers of the year, and I'm going to award that to. I know, but hey, sometimes it happens, man. Sometimes 2 is greater than 1, and actually that's all the time. But essentially, I think that Taz Nicholson and Corey Thornton are going to make such a difference with this secondary, allowing Quincy to, continue to be himself, even maybe more of himself, but also now not have to worry about a situation in where you're getting a mismatch with your second corner, against another wide receiver because Quincy's not necessarily following a receiver, but he's, playing in a certain spot, on one of the defensive back roles. So
boundary field corner. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Right. Where, as we saw with Trey Clark in his final year, they did some of that back and forth where he played a little bit inside in the slot, which I want to personally see a lot of Quincy there this year because, you're going to see a lot of that in the NFL. That's a big thing is a skill to be able to cover in the slot. But I think that Taz Nicholson and Corey Thornton bring another level of play at the corner spot that's even greater than what they had when they had, Clark and Brownlee and some of the other guys on the roster at the same time. These are 3 proven commodities that are all looking to be NFL players. And this day and age, man, you don't have to dominate. You don't have to necessarily put up big numbers. You just have to prove that with your snaps that you can do something at a very high level. And I think you'll see a lot of that this year where maybe, they don't have an interception, but they have 3 or 4 pass breakups. They, made a big play. They popped the ball out on a big hit. That would have been a touchdown, something like that, to the level week after week where you look at that secondary and you're just like, this is one of the best in the ACC. You know what I mean?
Like all over the field.
Exactly. Right. So I think this is going to be a group that's going to be, there's not much thinking that has to be done here. It's attack, but also play sound disciplined football. Don't jump routes. Don't try to be dumb. Want to watch penalties. That is going to be an issue, I do think, unfortunately, with the 3 of them, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But in some regard, we'll see.
Man, that's like that's a weird line to toe to line, whatever the saying is.
Being aggressive. Yeah.
They always say like corners have the shortest term memory of all time because, or at least that's what my old coach used to say at Trinity, because he's like, you can't get burnt one play, make the tackle, and now you're at the 10-yard line. You just sit there and kick dirt and be pissed at yourself, or you're gonna go saddle back up and cover the fade that they're about to run to you too because you just got burnt on a go ball. I mean, it's tough, man. Especially like linebacker, you can kind of take that out in many different ways. I mean, you're taking on a block or you're shedding a block, X, Y, and Z. If you're too aggressive at the corner position, you get beat.
Yeah, and I mean, it's expected of you too to be that guy in coverage. Corner, as much as I like to sort of knock on the outside of the field positions, the corners, the wide receivers, like at corner, it requires almost a delusional level of confidence just to play the position, because if you get cooked, everyone knows you got cooked, and you have to be able to bounce right back and go right back to coverage like it never happened. So
like if I was was it Marlon Character in the Miami game that I yelled at? I would have, dude. I would have had to hang it up after that. Turning the wrong way on a post route like that. That's bad.
Yeah. All right. What you got, Keith?
All right. So I'm going to steer the ship back on track. So newcomer of the year for me. This is going to come as a shock to absolutely no one. Pete Nigra, starting center, up there with left tackle, is the hardest position on the offensive line. You have so much responsibility on your shoulders. He's coming in as one of the few guys who actually has multiple years of eligibility left. So he's a guy who can come in, set the tone, become a leader, and then carry that on into next season as well. And also just because of the level of talent at defensive tackle that we're going to be playing this season. Clemson, Kentucky, Miami all have elite interior defensive linemen, Notre Dame as well. Like, he's going to be going up against some dudes. So he's a guy who's going to be tested a lot this year. And if Louisville is going to have this aspirational season that we seem to believe they can, he's going to have to be able to be that guy and to be able to lock down the center of the O-line.
Yeah. The best thing that can happen is that we're not talking about him at any point throughout the season. You know what I mean? And you know what I mean? Like, I mean that with all due respect. Like,
if he has a good game, trust me, I'll let you know.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But you know what I mean? The best thing that he could do following behind Brian Hudson is to step in and just continue that same level of play. Like, to where we're not like, man, that center spot is a real glaring weakness. They can't, get any push up the middle, whatever the case is.
We went from Cole Bentley, who was a 3-year starter, to Brian Hudson, who was a 3-year starter, right?
2-year, I think.
2-year starter. I mean, Pete Nigra,
could be that guy.
He has some big shoes to fill in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, for sure.
If you really think about it.
Okay, last one here from the superlative category, freshman of the year and redshirt freshman who played in 4 games or less also are qualified here. So that opens up hopefully some more options for you all.
Community notes.
Yeah, community editor's notes at the bottom here. A little disclaimer.
Redshirt freshman count.
Exactly. But I'm going to go with a guy. This might be the easiest answer of all of them. I'm glad I get to go first here, but I'm going to go with a guy that the staff is already talking about. Typically, you don't hear a lot of freshman chatter unless it's a quarterback or somebody that's going to play a prominent role. But you're already hearing comparisons to players of years past, dominant players of years past, at a position where there's not even yet to this point. We sit here on Tuesday, August 27th, and there is not a firm leader in the backfield right at this point in time that I guaranteed this is who's starting day one like there was last season, right? So for me, I'm going with Isaac Brown, and I'm going to put a little caveat of a bold prediction on this that I don't want to say I think, but it would not shock me and if by Stanford game, he's the starting running back. Or getting close. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if we go into the end of the year and it's very clear this is his backfield. Like this,
I don't think that's shocking at all, Jacob. I don't think it's
right
at all.
They're all for him to go through spring ball. Already talk about him at this level, comparing him to Jawar. He is. I mean, I know Mo Turner is the speed back and has the option, all that versatility. But they're talking about Isaac being the one cut running back and he's gone type of speed that this team outside of that doesn't really have. So I think that's really exciting. I think you're going to see him get carries slowly to start. One note I made from Jeff Brown that when he brought up talking about Isaac Brown, not about him, but just about freshman running backs. Got to hold on to that pigskin. Like, can't be letting the sugar go, man. You gotta hold that thing like it's your child. And freshmen, I guess I can't say that I know this. Okay, you two know what this is like, but I can imagine as a freshman, the first time you get hit by somebody else, that ball might feel a little loose. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it might, you're not quite ready for the impact.
That's for sure. The thing is, like these, so we have these footballs, I'm sure they're all around the country, at the collegiate, at the D1 level, at least, that beep, and they beep at the 4 corners of pressure. So you have to have the 4 corners of pressure, otherwise it won't beep. So I mean, we used to use him all the time under Petrino. Use him very little under Satterfield, but they better get Isaac on some of them if he's struggling to hold on to that pigskin.
Yeah, well, you know that's just a common thing with freshmen. So hopefully that's not Isaac's thing, and that's more just like we're trying to keep him level-headed.
Pass pro for me. I'm shocked Jeff didn't mention that. Like, if he doesn't pick up the right linebacker, he's going to get Tyler decapitated.
I would imagine if they have him in, it's very unlikely they're going to be relying on him for pass protection. It's going to be throw a chip and then get in the flats for the check down, or just be the hot, be ready.
Colby Smith used to love when dudes would like break freaking ends ribs on a chip block.
Oh, I mean,
chips are beautiful. Go ahead,
look,
Keith.
though, I was just going to say real last thing on him. I think that he should be at this point, the expectation for him to even be being considered and talked about, he's got to be showing some of that. They know they can't put him on the field if he can't protect his quarterback. So hopefully he's a guy willingly accepting that, like ready to roll.
I bet he balled out in one of those young guys scrimmages, or at least whenever like majority of the freshmen were playing, where they were like, yeah, like if once you get this kid out here and he gets everything going, it's because I mean you still got to figure out how to read holes and stuff, and it's moving a lot faster. To your point, that's probably one of the issues freshmen have as well, Jacob, is being able to read those live bullets as they're flying. So I'm excited for him. I don't think that any of the stuff you said was near as close to the craziest things you've ever said on the show.
Okay. Yeah. Nice place to kind of baseline us for the year. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, right.
All right. So newcomer of the year. I won't gush on them too much because we've already talked about him a little bit. Someone who I think is going to see some significant defensive playing time this year in a very significant role. And that's going to be Aaron Williams. I think playing probably in that nickel, in that dime package, playing some DB. I fully expect him to get out there, and I'm really excited to see this kid play.
Yeah. No, I like that, man. I mean, if he's as good as they talked about, Louisville's got their starting corner for the next couple of years. I mean, that's really exciting.
So I'm going with the guy who I was honestly like, whenever I saw him in person, I was like, holy shit. As soon as this kid adds about 50 pounds of muscle, he is going to be a problem. And that's Adonijah Green. And I'm going with him strictly just to get somebody different on the board. I know I already picked Aaron Williams, who could technically still go under this category like Keith did. But we talked so heavily about Ashton in this pass rushing role, and we haven't really clarified who's going to be the yin to Ashton's yang and, all that good stuff. Adonijah Green could be that guy that we put in there on the third downs, surefire pass downs to get back there and go make a play. He is so long. And it seems that he has put some weight on, which is exactly what he's needed. He could probably even put another 20 more pounds on. He's so long and lanky. But that's the kid I'm definitely going to go with.
All right. So this has been eating at me for the last few episodes because we've been talking about him a lot. And
did I pick another player that was hurt?
No. He's a guy who deserves it. But you all are saying Adonijah. I thought his name was Adonijah.
Yeah, I think we're wrong on that one, man. I think I'm more set in my ways until I hear it enough times. That's my no. I think
take a second. Okay. Get a second. I know how it's pronounced.
Yeah, no, that is when you talk about a player. That's how you know a player is good. That we've been talking about him for that long, where we had to go without knowing his official pronunciation of it. So thank you, producer / researcher / linguistics coach.
Should have been here for
Keith.
Tyler Harrell, Keith.
Yes.
Oh, dude.
No. I'll make you so proud, man. The other day was talking about him, and sure enough, just came right out. Tyler Harrell. Like, no, that's not his name. No, that's just one of those where I get the yips right before I say it. But let's transition into wins and losses here. But before we do so, I want to tell you a little bit more about Frankfort Avenue Liquors and Wine, because you have a need for more alcohol and more liquor and all the things that go into a great tailgate, because there's football in just a couple of days. You're going to get out there at Cardinal Stadium, rain or shine, do some tailgating, do some drinking, mimosas in the morning. Fantastic place to get those would be Frankfort Avenue Liquors and Wine, right on your way into the stadium, conveniently located on Frankfort Avenue with parking run right in, get whatever you need from the store. They've got a great selection of local and national brands from, everything that you could imagine. Two, if you're going in on a regular night, or maybe, hey, I'm not going to judge you. Get yourself a nice little beer at some early times in the morning. But stop in there. They've got a full bar, full packaged goods store. That is the place to stock up. And when you are there, tell them that you heard us talking about them on From the Pink Seats podcast. Now, predictions for wins and losses, the most important part of our off season right now. It all culminates in us predicting. We've had however many months to dissect transfers, learn new transfers, and then have them leave, and a schedule, and recruiting, and all the off-season Mount Rushmores that we did.
Cutting you off right here. Were you talking about Penny Boone right there and how he didn't even win the second string running back job at UCF?
Yeah, he's an Orr guy.
Yeah.
Penny Boone's an Orr guy. I hate to see it.
Third string running back. That sucks.
Like I said last week, grass isn't always greener on the other side. But hey, stand on business, Penny. Let's talk about the schedule though, because guys, I gotta just be. Is this a safe place? I know we got an audience watching and listening, but is this a safe place? I just want to be real with you guys.
I said we're going to beat Ole Miss.
As safe as the internet can be.
Yes. Okay. Well, I just want to be realistic with my feelings and my emotions. I think that's the best thing I can do. And I don't know if it's just that we're getting so close to the season starting. I don't know if it's the fact that national media is disrespecting seems harsh, but not necessarily a fan of Louisville. It's enough time to look at the schedule and find 9,000 things that could go wrong. But the last couple of weeks, I've been feeling a little pessimistic, like just a little down, to the point that I might have picked. I just listed all the reasons why. I think I didn't. I just listed what has been kind of weighing on me. But the wide receiver position, you lose your star go-to guy that was going to serve as your Jamari Thrash, your whatever you want to insert name here. There was already questions about that position. Keith highlighted one thing that I think is a concern and might be a theme throughout the season, and that is an offensive line that's built to pass pro and is not built to run. And without the weapons sometimes necessary, that makes a team not that great. So There's some reasons for that. Defensively, I mean, I think this team could wake up and hold teams to 21.
We're going back to Schnellenberger days.
But I do think there's going to be, there could be, chances of extended periods where this offense struggles against better teams. And even in situations where they're not where Louisville is clearly the better team, there will be instances where they struggle. Anyways, what I was getting to is that I've had some time to come out of that and I'm feeling a little bit better, but it does still bear impact on how I predicted this schedule. If you would ask me 2 months ago to predict this, I would have had a different answer than what I have right now.
I know we're going to get into it, but did this past weekend change how you're predicting the schedule at all?
No, it did not.
No? Okay.
No,
Okay.
it did not. No,
Okay.
it did not. That game still remains the same outcome. But let's do it this week, because I told you I don't think going game by game and I don't think it's worth doing that. But what I'll do is I will just I'll give you my losses, okay, and then you can read in between the lines, and I'll give you my record, of course, but you can read between the lines of opponents. We know the schedule, but two of these are not surprising. One of them will throw you for a loop here, but it's recurring theme. Remember that. We'll get to it in a second. Miami and Clemson are loss 1 and 2 for me on this schedule. I sat with it for quite a bit of time. I'm not the football savant that Keith is. He's going to get into it, and I'll let him give you all the reasons roster-wise. But there's a culmination of it. Seems like Miami has probably one of the most talented rosters in all of college football. They got experience. They got a quarterback. They got all that. The coach, say what you will. Seems like the writing is on the wall that this could be the year where they kind of become the team in the ACC. And then Clemson, until Louisville does it, I just can't predict them walking into Death Valley and beating them. I think it'll be close, competitive game. But ultimately, I think Clemson wins that one. And then my third loss is, and gosh, Vince, you're gonna if you were with me, you'd probably put me in a chokehold.
I think we might have the same loss.
Okay, maybe we do then. But it's at Stanford is my third loss.
Never mind. No. We
Yeah,
don't lose.
so
No.
the reason for this being Louisville's third loss is it falls in a very weird point in the schedule. Louisville's got a really tough stretch where they go at, Georgia Tech coming off that bye week, at Notre Dame, SMU, at Virginia, Miami, at BC, at Clemson. Then they go on a long bye, right? So you're talking about a very long extended period where that bye week, they're going to be resting, trying to get guys healthy, trying to prepare, and then have to turn around, travel to Palo Alto, playing a game on a completely different times, a completely different time zone, get used to that. We saw, I'm not necessarily it's apples to apples, but what happened last year in the Holiday Bowl, I think that game is just one where they'll be kind of focused on Kentucky. I think Kentucky will, start to kind of get some attention 2 weeks early. Coming off a bye week, it's a long trip. Just real opportunity for Jeff Brom to do what he does at least one time every single year, and that's drop a game they shouldn't. So 9-3 losses against those three. And then I'll highlight that Louisville walked into Notre Dame and beat them once. I can absolutely see them doing it again. I believe they will do it again. Georgia Tech will be a really, really competitive game. I think that might be one of the best games of the season. In fact, I cannot wait for that. But overall, and then Kentucky. Louisville does it this year. I think Kentucky's going to end up being the train that goes off the tracks by the end of the season, and I think that won't be that great of a game. That's where I'm at, fellas. 9-3.
All right, I'll go next because mine's probably gonna be short and sweet. It's undefeated. I don't think we're losing.
You can actually predict that.
That's what you wanted me to say. Right. No, my losses are Clemson for the same reason Jacob said. I have yet to seen it. Closest thing we got was in 2016, and we thought we had a good shot in 17. Turns out we didn't. So we think we have a good shot this year. We'll have to see. And the second loss for me is Kentucky. I think we will lose that game to Kentucky strictly based off it being at their place, us not having beat them in a couple of years. We're still trying to figure out what their quarterback situation is going to be between Brock and Gavin Wimsatt and their offensive line having injuries, their running back having injuries. We'll have to see with them, but I don't think we'll beat Kentucky. Everyone else, I think we will handle. Now, I'm not saying we're going to dog walk everybody. No. Tough games, I think, are definitely going to be Tech, Notre Dame, Clemson, obviously, and Kentucky. I don't think Miami's all that in a bag of chips. I've said that multiple times on the show, and I'm going to stand on that ground until they prove me differently.
Might be college game day that weekend, to be quite honest.
I don't think it'll be college game day. I wonder how many weeks, what are we? What week is that?
Louisville would be potentially going into that game 6-0.
Yeah, so they could be going into that game 3-3.
My hot take on college game day is after they were given the business doing a Florida State game in a week where they basically had to do a Florida State game, I think they're going to be dodging ACC schools like the plague because all ACC fans are giving ESPN the business. So I think they are just going to try and dodge that as much as possible. To the extent where I think
kind of weak.
Like for, week 13, where the SEC all play Joe and Mary's Saint School for the Blind and Poor. They might try to go to, because the SEC is the other ESPN property. I wouldn't be shocked if they went to a Big Ten game over ACC, despite it being their own property, just because, quite frankly, ACC fans, we shouldn't like ESPN. They screwed us last year. They screwed the league as a whole, and John Skipper probably spelled doom for the league. Now, granted, it's not all his fault. The commissioner signed the deal, and I've got my own side rant for that. But I don't think game day is coming to ACC schools very often.
So to steer it back on track, I'm going 10-2 with us. Okay. I'm going to go 10-2. I think it's going to just be a repeat. That's what we did finish last year in the regular season, right? 10-2.
Yes.
10-3.
It was 10-2 regular season,
and then they lost.
So I think we have a good shot of making it back to the ACC championship game. Obviously, I think we have a good shot of winning it. I think this team has a very, very good shot of being better than last year's team, based off of the defense already being better than what it was last year, and offensively we just have some question marks. And I think I'm going to trust Coach Brom and the guys that he brought in, and Tyler Shuck and Going to trust the development of guys like Jamari Johnson, Mo Turner, Isaac Brown, the offensive line, Michael Gonzalez, all these other guys. I'm going to trust the coaches on their development and go ahead and say that this is Brahms' best team he's ever had again. Yeah. Like I said it last year, I think this is probably his most talented team again, where he's going to be able to spread the ball around. And I mean, this could be one of his best quarterbacks to spread the ball around. We don't know. Yeah. Jury's still out on that. And 10-2 is where I'm standing.
Okay. All right, Keith, bring us home, man.
So I find myself in a bit of a weird place. I'm really optimistic when I hop on the pod and talk with you guys, and I go through the positives of the roster, and I get myself back. And then I step away, and it just starts to pile and creep and hit me. Now, I will say week 0, while it didn't necessarily change my win-loss projections, there were some things that gave me a bit of room for optimism. But if you hammer me down and make me pick one of the two options, because I'm torn between a couple, I think I'm going to go, I will be the optimist of my two options and say 8-4. So part of the reason behind that, Notre Dame, yes, we've won there before. It's happened. We're playing a Georgia Tech team that if you look over them or you don't bring your best game plan, they can get you. Like,
yeah, that's 100%.
And Notre Dame will be playing Miami of Ohio the week before they play us, where we're actually having to gear up, dial in, focus on Georgia Tech.
So they'll be doing 50% game prep for Louisville and 50%
especially
game prep for
after
Miami of Ohio.
Especially after last year, because that staff is pissed.
Yeah, they're not going to let it be a surprise. By no means. Louisville's going to have to go out and earn that one.
The next game that I sort of think, because I've cooled off on SMU quite a bit. Not necessarily because the game was close, but we'll talk more about that later. The next one, Miami. And the reason I think Miami gets us, yes, it's a road game. Yes, it's at our house. For us to keep it close, we're going to have the fan base being raucous and at risk of being like a heel pro wrestler. I don't think the crowd's going to be as raucous as it was for Notre Dame or Kentucky last year. Especially if Miami comes out, if they lose week 1 to Florida, no one's going to show up.
That would be hilarious.
Would be, my God. But that's going to hurt attendance. I don't think it's going to happen either.
No,
I think Miami's going to make the playoffs. I think they're really good.
Yeah,
but they're coming off
smoking crack.
They're coming.
You should try
off the weed. Stay off the weed. Y'all are crazy. No, Miami's not making the playoffs. They're not making the playoffs. Get that out of your head.
Well, you know what? I hope you're right solely for the case because that improves Louisville's odds.
Right.
But they're coming off a bye week before they play us, and Florida State has already shown weaknesses. They're not the boogeyman to be feared like a lot of people thought they were in the preseason. The next one, Clemson. And the easy reason is to say, I'm not going to pick it until we do it. Yeah, that kind of goes into it. They're also coming off of a bye week before we go to their place to play them. So that's 2 weeks of game day prep they're going to have for us coming down to town. And then I'm sort of torn because while we are on the road, the cards sort of line up. See what I did there? For us to have an opportunity to sneak one on the road at Kentucky because they're coming off playing Texas, who I think is a national championship contender. So they're going at the road to DKR to play a friggin' wagon of a team. That's going to be a team that's real beat up coming into this game. Now, granted, we're going to be beat up too. Right. And one of the things that scares me is because they've recruited at a higher level than us for half a decade plus at this point, they're just naturally a deeper roster than we are, at least when it comes to a baseline talent threshold. So if it just becomes a battle of depth, I'm a little worried. But if we can come into that game relatively healthy, they're coming off probably a hard-fought loss to Texas on the road, having to turn around, I think we can get that one. And I promise Matt didn't put this in my ear. A game that kind of scares me, Friday night in Chestnut Hill against Bill O'Brien and Thomas Castellanos in Boston College. They're coming off of a bye week at Vatek, than us going into another bye week. There's not another game they're looking forward to. The game the week before is on a Thursday, so they're coming off an extra day's rest where we're coming off a Saturday coming into a short week. Look, if we lose that game, the fan base should be furious. But that's a game that scares the hell out of me because Jeff Brom has shown a tendency over his career to drop some of those, what the hell were we doing games? And a cold Friday night in Boston just seems like that screaming trap game to me.
Yeah, man,
so
I'm right there with you. I think I'm quoted on this show a few years ago as saying there's nothing worse in this life than having to go play football in Chestnut Hill in late October and early November. It's a death sentence for teams who don't want to play. Like, there's 8 people there cheering for you.
Say Jacob and I are wrong. Keith, hits the nail on the head. We're 8-4. Where do you guys think? Is that what you said, Keith? 8-4.
Yeah. 8-4. Honestly, pessimistic side 7-5, where we don't get that one. But
say we're 8-4. Say we're 8-4, 7-5. Where do you guys think the fan base is at? Mentally after coming off a 10-2 regular season and
that's a great question, and hopefully a bridge we don't have to cross. But I think the first question would be, what was the health of your football team? If there are injuries along the way that play a role in that, you drop a game because Tyler Shuck can't go or whatever the case is, you lose somebody on the defensive side of the ball for a significant period of time. That's the only way I can envision I shouldn't say the only way, it's one game less, but to get to 7-5, which would be 2 less from where I was at, I just think that something drastically bad would have to happen versus like where Keith is going, where he just believes there would be teams between all the really, really good teams that are better than Louisville and then the trap games adding up to come to that. I just can't see that happening. So if it does, though, I mean, Jeff Brom's going to get a pass for what he did last year. For it just not working is probably the narrative that we would say from the portal, which would make, Keith, he would be upset because Louisville's not doing great, but underneath, he'd be like, I told you so. It's like, I wonder who was saying that.
He's going to have a Keith was right shirt on that episode.
Exactly. So that's where I'm at. I just thought the fan base is not at a point where I think there's going to be any type of pressure. It's just a matter of like, okay, you kind of missed your window. Now go ahead, develop those 23 guys, get the 24 class, 2, and then let's get prepared to take that next step over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I was just wondering, just because I remember after whenever granted he was flirting with South Carolina after that season, but after we won nine wins, just the fall off that following year, I remember that pressure.
Yeah.
It was like a pressure cooker inside that building.
So if that scenario were to come to pass, and maybe this is me just being sort of a bit of a nihilist, let's just say, well, it also depends how the 8-4 looks. Like, say we do drop that what the hell game in Chestnut Hill, but we beat Kentucky. I think the fan base will be just fine. But say we just lose the 4, Notre Dame, Clemson, Miami, Kentucky. I think a lot of the patience with Jeff Brom is going to depend on did we beat Tennessee on November 9th? How are we doing in the battle for Atlantis? I think Pat Kelsey and the basketball program, if they are good coming out to start, that's going to take a lot of the pressure because, like, as much as I loathe it, Louisville's a basketball school. Like,
I'm right there with you, Keith. Me and you
it's like
people standing on that hill saying football school.
It's like, just don't be embarrassing and get us to basketball season. That's all Jeff Brom has to do, especially because he's a Brom.
Yeah.
And now that's not enough for me. And I hope that's not enough for the people that are tuned into this podcast.
Right.
But that's enough for 60% of the Louisville fan base. You're not going to have people jumping in Josh Hurd at him on Twitter. Jeff Brom needs to be fired. We went 7-5. This is unacceptable. Like, we just don't have that in us for whatever reason.
Yeah, no, I and there shouldn't be this early on. It's not as if, it maybe if Louisville goes 2-10, we're having a completely different conversation.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Shit. We are 2-10. I don't know.
Yeah, let's not, no, we're not even going to
I can only do one of those in my lifetime.
Yeah, we're not going to do that. But, I agree with you that there's not going to be any pressure like that on him. But I would push back on the basketball narrative. Louisville is not Kentucky, where you lose a certain amount of games and then you go all in on basketball. I can tell you, man, from being there my all the way from late middle school, besides the Craigthorpe era, all the way up through Charlie Strong, Bobby Petrino. This city supports and can do both. Now, if Louisville is got a bad record, yeah, that's one thing. But if it's close, yeah, they have a couple of losses. I don't envision this being like in 2022 where Vince and I could yell at each other from across the stadium in a top 10 matchup with Wake Forest. I think he's built up enough support for that. But I do think that's a really great point that basketball will cover some of the potential woes here if Pat Kelsey turns it around. Because what I've said, Jeff Brom became the king, but if Pat Kelsey turns it around, Pat Kelsey is the god, and that will trump everything else that Jeff Brom has done up until this point. It's just facts. It is the way that it is in this city. So I do think that's an interesting narrative, but I don't know.
I'm going to push back on that for forever until it happens.
That's fair. That's fair.
I'm real proud of me for being a brave boy there, because that was like, what was the scene? Rocky 3 or 4. You want to break me down? You want me to say it? Say it. That was me right there.
Well, look, I think it says something.
You just had to get it off your chest, Keith. You just had to get it off.
Oh, okay. God, I've had that monkey on my back for 2 years, man. Well, more than that, honestly, but
yeah. Next segment, we'll dive into the usage of NIL funds. But finally, the last thing here is the Sat King, which we don't need to spend any time on this because we, aside from something happening, I think Ashton Gelati is the shoe-in favorite to be our first repeat winner. And I think, again, you talk about him and where he needs to be from a production standpoint to get those accolades and what his production can mean for this team. I think there's a scenario in which this defense, week to week, like if the offense is struggling, this defense can win them football games. Like,
I agree.
At the end of the day, Louisville's mission, if you really boil it down, maybe you all will disagree with this, but if this defense lives up to what we think they could be for Louisville, there's a magic number. If you just go out and score this many points on most weeks, not everybody, you're going to win the game because your defense is going to hold.
Exactly. So
go ahead, Keith. Go ahead.
I was going to say, worst case, let's say the worst happens. Shuck has an injury week 1. We have to trot Pierce out, and he looks like a kid who's in his first year as a starting quarterback. This defense, I'm 100% confident in saying Louisville still could win 8 games just being swaggy Iowa. Like, we don't need offense. Like, our defense will do the scoring for us.
Slightly more points.
Like I said, Iowa.
Swaggy Iowa.
Oh, man, that's a place I never want to be, swaggy Iowa.
Yeah, that kind of sucks.
Yeah, no, but I'm totally here for that. But, I think from a star standpoint, Ashton has got everything you need, and it's going to put the production up. Boom, end of story.
See, the thing about it is he's going to have to be the standout on the defense if he's going to want to get drafted where he wants to get drafted. I agree with you. He's going to be Sat King 100%. No arguments on that for sure.
Yeah.
But whenever he's moving around on the D line, he's just going to have to be that difference maker in the backfield on every single play. I mean, eating up double teams he's going to have to stand out.
Yeah, and there were times, as great as he was last year, there were times where he did have a tendency to disappear, and you wouldn't see him. Part of that was dealing with, for the first time, being the sole focus of a defense or of an offensive line trying to protect. But there's got to just be that next level of play, and I think he's going to meet that. So, all right, let's talk about the ACC. We don't have much time in a news segment. We're going to keep this short and sweet because we are a Louisville football podcast, but we play within a bigger means, which is the ACC conference. And it's very important that as a show, we're educated on what's happening around the ACC. And thankfully we have Keith here, producer Keith, analyst Keith, researcher Keith, Dr. Keith. We've got all the titles for Keith. So tonight, ACC Keith is going to take us around the ACC in 60 seconds. So Keith, set your timer.
All right. So I want to give a little bit of a preamble that
this I'm going to be 60 seconds.
I'm going to be a lot more detailed this week than I will be in future weeks, just because I've only got 2 games to go after. So with that being said, pardon me. Let's get this ball rolling. Okay. Florida State, Georgia Tech. Initially, my plan was to just laugh for 30 seconds at this game. Decided to go a different route. So I think this game said a lot more about Florida State than it did about Georgia Tech. They're playing like we did last year, like we're scared of our quarterback and they're not letting him cook. Georgia Tech showed some flaws in that secondary that I think Brom and co. will be able to find a way to exploit. The Jackets dared Florida State to be aggressive in their passing game with aggressive blitz packages, and DJ couldn't get the job done. Georgia Tech offense, completely one-dimensional. They kept the ball out of Haynes King's hand in the passing game as much as possible because he is very prone to errors. SMU Nevada, new coach, team completely bought in. They played like a team that SMU personally insulted each and every one of their mothers. SMU, very suspect in the trenches, very suspect, and made a lot of boneheaded mistakes, but high-end talent and skill play wins the day. RJ Maryland is a problem. 8 catches, 162 yards, and a touchdown to save the day late time.
Man, that was
awesome.
I love
that was awesome.
That was just week 1, man. Week 0, really. So we're gonna get better every week.
All right,
that, man.
I'm really excited to see what like a full schedule is going to sound like.
16 games is going to be tough.
Red. His face is going to be so red by the end of that.
Maybe we'll give you 90 seconds for busy ACC.
Sound like fucking Busta Rhymes.
Yeah, that's right, man.
I feel like running and I feel like I gotta get away, but I know that I don't want to stop, but you know I gotta win every day to go.
That is well executed. And a great segue into the last part of the show, which is the most important part of the show, the preview of week 1, Louisville football.
Austin Peay view.
The Austin Peay view. That's right. God damn it. I'm pissed I didn't think of that. It's going to just call them the Fighting Peas, man. I couldn't think of anything better. I tried for like 5 minutes. Yeah, it's just smoke coming out of here. But Louisville, game 1. I personally like it when they play good teams week 1. I know you end up with a Syracuse loss every once in a while, but I just prefer it a little bit more than these games where at halftime, knock on wood, the game really doesn't matter. And then nerds like us are still like with our binoculars, like, oh, it's Harrison Bailey in there for his first time. Like nobody else cares. They're all on the party deck watching the game. But this weekend will be really interesting. Let's just start with Louisville. Obviously, we've talked about new quarterback. We've talked about, new running back, new weapons, new offensive line in a lot of places. Defense, it returns star power. They add star power. They get deeper in places that it really is important to be a deep team. In fact, Jeff Brom says we feel comfortable playing 7 to 9 offensive linemen. I've seen the number floated around. I don't remember if this is a credible source, but potentially up to 11 defensive linemen could see the field in regular rotation. I mean, those are not numbers we're used to around here. So those are good signs for Louisville. But there are certainly a lot of questions that Jeff Brom and his squad will have to answer, including where does the production come from if Colin Lacey is not on the field? Is Amari Huggins-Bruce a suitable answer to that? Or will we see somebody step into the position and thrive, or, maybe the opposite, but a guy that we have not yet seen, a la a Blue Hicks, a Jaleel McClain, or, a Jaden Thompson, somebody along those lines this season. And this game will allow for that to be answered. I've said it all off season. It's an extension of training camp, almost like a preseason where if you lose, it does count. Obviously I'm not saying they can't lose, but if things go well, these are 2 games you should be able to win by a pretty hefty amount, even against Jacksonville State, a fairly good team coached by, obviously a very well renowned football mind. Rich Rod, right. So let's talk about Austin Peay. Knowing what we know about Louisville, we know our impact players, Ashton, Quincy, Tyler Shuck. What are they going to do? They're going to try to run the football. They're going to try to pass the ball. How quickly into the game do they get a trick play? I'm going to go. I was thinking about this. Maybe first play, trick play. You know what I mean? I could see it.
So
Jesus,
maybe
insane.
That would be insane. But now, Vince, maybe you were on a staff, you would know how much hiding of the playbook do you do for these early season games? Like, obviously, you got to dust a little bit more off. If it's like, hey, this is closer than we expected, we might actually have to bust some stuff out. I feel like if things go as we all hope, like we're going to see a pretty bare bones game plan. We're not going to see anything too creative. We're not going to.
It's going to be a base offense, and there's going to be a push in case of emergency button, which will be your other plays that you're speaking of, Keith, that you'd like to probably keep in the gun clip for Tech and these other schools that are, coming down the road. But I mean, you definitely run the same stuff. They're going to come out and likely script the first 7 to however many plays and try and score on as many of those plays as possible, and then definitely go from there.
Yeah. So it's a weird sort of game, and it's really tough to get a view on. Like, we're talking about Louisville now, but we know so little about the team we're playing against, so we don't really know what to expect us to do to counter. So I feel like it's just going to be almost vanilla Louisville. Like, in a vacuum, this is what Louisville wants to run if they are dominating a game and just want to hold serve until we get home. On the offensive side of the ball, on the defensive side of the ball, this is as vanilla, as bread and butter as you're going to get. So
I think it'll be a lot of like big, and out of those vanilla plays, Keith, it will have to be like big plays that are your exciting boom stuff. You know what I mean? It's going to have to be a long run from somebody, from the running back. It's gonna
Isaac Brown showing the speed.
Exactly. Yeah. A double move from a DB. A double move isn't something you should be hiding in your back pocket. A double move is a double move. That's something DBs practice every single day of football season. So, I mean, stuff like that, big plays, is really what I'm going to be tuning in for. I expect a decent amount of big plays out of this group on Saturday.
You're going to see a lot of guys play. If you go back to what they did last year against Murray State, where they played 9 quarterbacks, like, assuming this lead gets to where it should, you're going to see a lot of 2s, 3s, 4s in the games, walk on.
I want to see some of them throw the ball, though. Jacob, like, if Pierce is in the game, I want to see Pierce throwing the ball. I don't want to see him run. I know it probably doesn't look good to be throwing the ball up 62 to whatever against Austin Peay, or, I'm not saying it's going to be that, but like, I know it probably doesn't look good, but we need the reps. Pierce Clarkson needs those reps against live action, not just practice guys.
Yeah. I don't know if we're going to get so deep into like the 3s and 4s and whatnot, but I would expect to see the 2s if all goes according to plan. And I don't think we would be up the disrespectful amount where it's just, okay, running clock, let's just get 2 minutes off every drive, punt it, and then let them try, get 2 minutes off. Like, I think we would still be in a spot where, okay, we got the 2s in for the fourth quarter, but we're running our offense to let guys get some experience, get some of those live reps. I wouldn't be shocked to see if we do like a Brian Brom-esque Pierce Clarkson package in like the second quarter. Let him get out.
I wouldn't mind seeing him with the 1s. Why not?
Exactly. Especially like, I think it's overharped on, but with Shucks passed, like, yeah, as much 1s reps as you can get for Pierce, let it fly. But I mean, this isn't a team of scrubs. Like, they made the playoffs last year. They won 9 straight games. I don't think it's going to be the Murray beatdown we saw last year.
Yeah, and that's a fair assessment. You know much more about Austin Peay than I, but when you look at the fact that it's a new trio of coaches, so you're talking a new head coach, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, I think just 2 returning starters across 22, positional starters. So a lot of new pieces to bring in, a lot of players, as we alluded to earlier, exiting to follow their previous coach to, what was it, UTEP is where he went?
Yeah, these guys made the jump.
So stepping up a level. And so they're a team that, depleted, by the portal following, a coach. That happens pretty often. They've certainly been able to go out and get some impactful guys, which, Keith, I'll hand that to you in just a second to kind of walk through some players to know for them. But at the end of the day, they are also trying to figure out a ton. Now, this is a much, bigger focus. Yeah, I don't want to say focus, but, obviously they know what they're walking into. They know what they're getting into. So there's no reserve it and hold it back. Yeah,
they're firing that whole thing.
So do I think that early on they're going to try to throw some of those, again, Keith, you're going to get into some of the schematics and things, but are they going to throw some of those screens, going to miss some tackles? Louisville's going to, make some key boneheaded penalties, and it looks kind of sloppy to start. I'd say there's a good chance that happens. But ultimately, I think the talent on Louisville's team, I mean, they're just going to be able to, just be able to dominate. And I think this offense will offense and score. And that's where you're totally spot on in terms of this team is much better than Murray State, but I still think Louisville could. And if you remember, Louisville, it took them a while to get going in that game. Like, I remember at the first quarter, the spread was very similar to like what it is in this game. And I think it was like 10-0 or 14-0. And then Louisville just turned it on. So I think that's kind of similar to what we'll see. But Keith, walk us through, talk us through a little bit about what we can expect from the team. Obviously, I mentioned new head coach, new offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. Unless you've been in the meeting rooms, you're probably waiting to see what this looks like just as much as I. But you know more about some of the guys that have gone there and things of that nature. So walk us through what fans can expect.
Yeah, I mean, well, a new coordinator too. We don't know who's going to take that. We're not going to dive into that subject matter, but this is a team that's having to go through some disarray and adversity right now. Like there, and Vince, you've been on teams that have dealt with issues. I don't know if anything similar to this, but you've been on teams that
Not
have
that
to go
severe, but definitely I've lost my tight end coach 2 weeks before the season started where he got fired. Also, I'm not going to dive into that topic, but yeah, it definitely throws. So it's a weird, and ironically enough, Richard Owens was that coach that slid in as the interim tight end coach. But that's it's still weird. We didn't have the same camaraderie that we had with that specific coach that we did with Coach Owens. It's just different.
So it's going to be a real test, and I'm sure the head coach is going to try and leverage this as an opportunity to get his guys to try and come together to rise above the adversity that they're going through. So more for on the field stuff. We mentioned the new head coach who I had a chance to study over the last 4 or 5 years. Vince, he was at Duke for a few years up until 2000.
Like working in the cafeteria, like janitorial.
So
they don't have a football team.
Tight end coach, and then I believe he was promoted to O coordinator, play caller. His
I didn't know they had intramural tight ends.
Promoted to O coordinator, co-play caller, co-O coordinator, play caller at Duke in 2022. Then went to UCLA following Chip Kelly, and worked under him for for the 22 and 23 season. So 2021 was his last year at Duke. So in watching some of the play calling that he did when he was the play caller at Duke, he runs a spread offense. A lot of what I noticed was stack formation with the wide receivers to set up a lot of bubble screens where you already have a blocker built in out there. So a lot of like option thing. Basically, if you've watched a Chip Kelly team, this is the offense that he, in theory, would like to run. Is he going to run that with the players that he has? I don't know. First year at a program, sometimes you got to make some changes to make things work. So like Coach Brom said throughout the course of the week, like we have an idea of what we think they're going to run, but we won't know until we see it.
You mentioned the Chip Kelly-esque style of play calling. I'm curious as to how much Louisville's prepped for that style of speed and that many plays coming at you that quickly. I mean, are they going to go tempo? Is it going to be a no huddle situation? What is that going to look like?
So at least from the Duke days, he wasn't running no huddle tempo. It was just more of like that spread offense they didn't run enough option to where I would call it a true spread option offense, but a spread offense with a lot of screens, a little bit of option action. Very rarely do you see them going with multiple tight ends on a look. You're not going to see them lining up in power eye.
No 12 personnel out of this team.
Exactly. So that's what I expect to see on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, I haven't got a clue what they're going to come out just because. Well, I mean, Vince, no team.
I love the pure honesty. Yeah.
No team really runs a true base defensive package. I would imagine you're probably going to see a lot of nickel trying to match up against a Louisville offense just because we're going to have so many receivers out wide. Defense is so much more about adaptability than it really is to like sticking true to your scheme. Like we're going to run this 4-3 no matter what set they come out and you're going to like it. So not sure what to see on that side. On the defensive side of the ball, though, I will point out one gentleman that could be a little bit of a thorn in our side, and that's Hosea Knifley Jr., which is just a fantastic last name for a defensive
great last
lineman.
Name, yeah.
He's a junior.
Senior, actually. But actually, Butler High School alum, so out of Louisville. So this is sort of a homecoming for him of sorts. Preseason all-conference player. In 2023, in rotational role, 4.5 sacks, 7 additional quarterback hurries, 7.5 tackles for loss on the year on top of the sacks. This is going to be one of the guys they rely on a lot on the defensive side of the ball to get things going. On the offensive side, a lot of transfer players. Couple of them, Lavelle Wright, a player who transferred in from Kentucky. I believe he's also from Louisville. I Don't have his high school off the top of my head. His only career touchdown was against Louisville, I believe, his freshman year, as sort of I'm assuming it was a, hey, you want a spike touchdown because Sat didn't recruit you? Come on, get in there.
Yep, I'm sure that happened.
Mason Garcia will be their starting quarterback. Now, the funny thing about this kid was a highly touted 4-star quarterback coming out of high school, committed to ECU, was the highest rated recruit the Pirates have ever landed. His player comparison coming out of high school, Josh Allen. This kid's like the kid's 6'4", 235, can run, has a massive arm, just wasn't able to quite put it together for the Pirates. This could be a reclamation project year for him. If he goes out and he balls, this could be a situation where he's trying to score another year to jump back up to the next level. He's a player that I'm kind of like, that could be spooky, but I don't know. Another.
No, I was just going to say on that, like, this ain't the game to get that reclamation project started. I'm sorry, Mason, but we'll have to wait to game 2 for that, man. Sorry about you.
A couple other D1 transfers that came down. Malik Bowen Sims, a wide receiver who transferred in from Duke. Looking over him, very limited playing time at Duke. He seemed like a player that got a degree from Duke and then decided, like, okay, I actually want to play my 5th year to jump down a level. But he's a player that had FBS level stats, so I wanted to dive into him. And funny enough,
I had FBS level stats too.
The player that I'm highest on is someone that no one, unless you listen to this podcast, will notice. Chandler Curtin. Apologies if I get that wrong, sir. Starting center, preseason All-American for FCS. And I was curious about this. He's a redshirt junior. So I went and watched the game that they played against University of Tennessee last year. They are leaving an FCS center soloing SEC nose guards, and he's doing the damn thing. Like, this kid's good. Like, we joked about it before the show. Like, hey, like, I mean, we're going to need a guard next year. Like, yeah, we could use Austin Collins and Pete Niagara could use a friend next year. Go give him a hug and maybe some contact information falls into his uniform. I don't know. This kid is good. So I think some of our interior defensive linemen could be having a little bit of a fit.
Well, at least they're not showing up. They're not showing up, and it's just an easy day at the office. You know, it's week 1. They got to put the work in. You know what I mean? That type of situation. Yeah.
Keith, do you think their coach, Jacob, this can apply to you as well, do you think their coach is saying right now they put their pant legs on the same way we do? I feel like that's always a go-to for a coach that knows he's not going to get his ass beat.
Got to make them believe, man.
They're not gods. If they can bleed, we can kill it.
We can bleed. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Look, they're definitely going to come wanting to have a moment on Louisville's behalf. And first games, there's been games where Louisville has played in what should be a blowout, and it's not been. So it's not a foregone conclusion that they'll show up and just rack up the points. Although I think that's what will happen. So
my thoughts on this are definitely the fact that I think teams like this, whenever they get punched in the mouth once, twice, even say we get up 14-0, 14-3. A lot of times they have a tendency to roll over, especially if they were up 14-3, they have the ball and they're kind of driving, maybe get a first down or two, and then they have to punt or there's a turnover. That's when you really see the life get sucked out of that football team.
Yeah. I'm curious to see things go, and I hope that's exactly what happens. They step on the field, we're no nonsense. We give them the ball, take it from them, run it down their throat. Give them the ball again, take it from them, run it down their throat. Like, that would be thrilled. Just unrelenting, to quote Mark Ennis, unrelenting murder ball. Yeah. I would be thrilled to see it. Joyless murder ball. Pardon me. That's the exact quote.
Look, man, you got to go to work, and they're the work, man. You got to do what you got to do. So let's get into the final part of the show here where we predict the game. And we've been doing this now for 4 years, predicting games. It's part of the week-to-week kind of run of show. You got to do it, obviously, if you're going to talk about the game. But this year, we want to spice it up a little bit. We've tried to track it, and we lose track every year. But now, again, we got more bodies. It's easier to do this. So this will be much more on the line for us to get our predictions correct. And so this year, guys, if it's okay with you all, we're going to leave it up to the audience as to what our awards and punishment are. We just are going to come with some options. But it's okay. We're playing. If you've read the show sheet, Vince, we're playing within the defined rules that have already been agreed to. So we're okay. But
I'm reading right now.
Here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you I'm going to list these, and then we're going to put these out on a poll on Twitter for folks to vote on. But for coming in first, where we predict game week after week, the options for our winner are an all-you-can-eat trip to Roosters. Trip to Roosters paid for by the losers, one could say. A full night of drinks with an Uber, paid for by the losers. I personally think this is my favorite, and if I win, I might do this because I think that as the egotistical men that we are, this one will really get our panties in a bunch. But the winner gets to claim on the show whenever they want that they know the most about Louisville football for one full offseason. At any given point, no matter where we are in the show, they get to claim that they know the most about Louisville football. I think Matt would take the most exception to that if we did that to him.
I would remind you at the start of every single show.
I was going to say, are we capping that to like a cap per episode, or otherwise it's going to be me? Yes.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's kind of like Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal, where every episode, Shaq is going to remind Charles Barkley that he did not win a title. That is what that will be in this situation. And then finally, a custom trophy designed by our winner. So obviously, we got to play within our very limited budget of funds here, but the winner gets to design what will be potentially the trophy that we just pass year to year. So those are our options for rewards for our winner. Here are the options for our punishment for finishing last. First, last place has to wear a shirt with some type of verbiage. We'll agree on this at a later date that essentially says something along the lines of, I came in last place at picking on the podcast, and they have to wear that shirt weekly on the show for the full off season. So every appearance that they make on the show, that will be their attire through the off season. I can't wait for the day where we're doing an interview with like Josh Hurd, and he gets on and one of us got a shirt says I was last. 24 hours in a Waffle House.
Now I just kind of want to do this one for fun. I might end up
Vince
picking wrong just so I can do it.
He doesn't want this to actually win, and if it does get voted to win, we're not going to do it. He's just going to do it.
I might just volunteer for this. I just want to see if I can eat 24 waffles in one sitting. I'm very confident I can.
I assure you, no, not 24.
You don't think so? If I had a whole pound of bacon and a gallon of coffee right there, you don't think I could smack 24 waffles?
First of all, you're really going astray adding in the pound of bacon along with the waffles. Not? You mean because you got to eat the waffles, man. You got to. That's bread.
Now, as the resident fat guy, there is some flavor theory to be incorporated that eating a food is less strenuous if you are mixing up flavor profiles. A pound might be a bit aggressive, but also 24 Waffle House waffles is aggressive.
You're talking about a man that consumed 13 fried bologna sandwiches last year during football
More than
season.
that, some of those I doubled up. That's a fact.
Okay, so that's second. And if you eat a waffle, one waffle is 1 hour down. So that's where Vince gets the 24 waffles. Third is singing karaoke live on the podcast or at a bar. And if it is at a bar, not on the show, it will be recorded for hashtag content. And then finally, also for the hashtag content, this is another popular punishment for fantasy football leagues. That is, the loser has to compete in a series of combine drills that is then recorded and shared out for the world to see.
Now, we're about to find out if the audience wants to see us hurt or not.
If they want us to hurt, they're going to vote the Waffle House one.
Yeah, right. I think I'd rather do the combine than have to eat 24 waffles. So,
From the Pink Seats podcast is not liable for any torn Achilles, elbows, shoulders, pectorals, or concussions acquired during the combine.
Or any upset tummies from eating 24 waffles. Yes, that is a disclaimer we want to throw out there. But Keith, set us up here for how we're going to pick this, because you are our resident degenerate, and you can help us understand best how to do this.
In a segment that I just made up, we're going to call it Let's Go Gambling. So to throw a little bit of flavor, a little bit of je ne sais quoi on the segments for picking games for Louisville. Last year, things got a little bit stale when picking, especially just going
Wow,
with the
you were
Bear
just
line.
a listener. That is so harsh. I didn't see any of those comments in the comment section, Keith.
So it became a lot of picking the same thing over and over and over because it's easy to pick like, oh, hey, Louisville versus Austin Peay. Who's going to win? Louisville. So this year, we're going to incorporate the point spread into it. And just for kicks and giggles, I'm going to throw odds on as well. Thanks to our good friends at insert the name of a sports book here, sponsor us.
There we go.
So, of course, for week 1, Louisville will be playing Austin Peay. And as of right now, the line is set at Louisville minus 36.5 at minus 110 odds, that being on both sides, whether you're giving up the points or taking the points. So, as I am the resident degenerate, I will be leading us into this. And I have a very strong philosophy when it comes to week 0 and week 1 games. And that is anytime I see Herculean point spreads, I take the points every single time. Because you never know, 1, if a team's just going to have an oopsie doodle day, or 2, usually when the backups or the third stringers get in, usually naturally they kind of come off the gas. And that allows those teams that have been getting their head kicked in to clear those 30, 40, 50 point spreads. So with that philosophy, I will be taking Austin Peay plus 36.5 week 1.
Okay. I like it. I will follow up, keep it very short and sweet. Louisville's going to dominate. Louisville's going to roll. They're going to cover the spread. I think it's going to be somewhere like a 45-7 type of game. Maybe a little higher on Louisville's side, maybe a little bit higher as well on Austin Peay, but I think Louisville covers the spread here. I think it'll take a little bit, like I was talking about earlier against Murray State last year, but Louisville covers. So I'm going to take Louisville to take care of business, 37+ points victory.
Now, I'm not like Keith, and I don't have a philosophy when it comes to gambling because I'm not a degenerate like Keith. I'm a degenerate in many other ways, Keith. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Louisville at the minus 36.5. I'm with Jacob on that.
Come on over.
I think it's going to be side. Yeah. I'm going with like somewhere around 10 to 14 points for Austin Peay. But I think it's going to be a big number day for Louisville. I think they'll light up the scoreboard. These games are always – I take them as like a fan service game for me because like I don't have to worry about anything. I just get to go out there, tailgate, enjoy the football game, and watch the boys go dominate. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
At some point, we'll have to get Matt out. I will try to bully him either tonight or tomorrow to just tweet something or give us something that we can tweet from the Pink Seats account just to keep him accountable because we know you all care.
That's
and
right.
Yeah, we'll have those rewards and punishments posted up for polls as well for you all to go vote on. Hop into the comments as well if you have any other ideas. Maybe we see something last second, try to change things up. Probably not, but still, the comments are fun for engagement anyway, so you should do it.
Are you guys going to congratulate me for winning our Mount Rushmore season?
That's exactly what I've been waiting. I just wrote it down. Waiting. Congratulate Vince. Do it quick.
I mean, I drafted all the best teams. It's a fact.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm just so proud of you, man. It's been a great off season for you, Vince. You've really blown up.
I'm undefeated in golf scrambles. I won Mount Rushmore. I mean, outside my lawnmower breaking. I mean, it's been a great summer.
Yeah, but I got to troll Matt, so who really won?
That was huge. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Matt, we'll see if he shows up for work next week. It's almost.
Yeah, he might ditch us for underwater basket weaving this time.
No. Shout out to Matt, hardest working Big J that we know around here. A lot harder work.
Covering a top 10 volleyball matchup.
That's right, man. Yeah. We're over here shooting the breeze about a Sack King trophy. But that'll do it for us tonight on From the Pink Seats podcast. I'm super excited to get into the season. I can't believe it's finally here. It's going to go just like that. So time to enjoy it, embrace it, get out there early Saturday morning, rain or shine, for that fried bologna sandwich, get that mimosa going, stop by Frankfort Avenue Liquors and Wine to get that. And then how about you stop by Kern's Korner on the way after you get a dub for some lunch. And then we'll talk next week. We got a little Labor Day action. We got to figure that out. We didn't account for a holiday being after the first game, which we should have. It's the same thing every year. But Labor Day recap, and then we'll get into game preview for Jacksonville State. And until then, ladies and gentlemen, I can say it very confidently and loudly. That's right. Go Cards.